Unit 4 Review, Question 6. Represent the unit fraction 1/8 using each of the representations below. So our first representation is a number line. So this number line is in your review sheet, and I put this one here for us to use as a guideline. So since the denominator is 8, that means we want to cut from 0 to 1 in 8 equal pieces. And to do that, notice we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines or 7 cuts. So if you start from the left, it makes it kind of hard to get the spacing equal. So a good way to do this is start by cutting it in half whenever the denominator is even. So now we have halves. I'm going to cut the halves in half. Okay, and I'm eyeballing it, and I'm pretty close. So this is computer generated, so it's perfect, but this is good enough. And now we'll cut those halves in half, and notice they line up pretty well, and we have 8 equal pieces. So 1/8 is one of these equal pieces to the right starting at 0. So this can be thought of as 0/8, and this is 1/8. We put a dot and we label it below. Let's look at the next one. We are still representing 1/8, but now we're going to use an area model, and it says use a unit labeled in the second row of the table. So notice here are the units, and I have examples of them down here, of them cut into 8 equal pieces. But let's do this by hand, and we'll use this as a guideline. So to cut this rectangle in 8 pieces, I'm going to start by cutting it in half. Okay. Now I'm going to cut the halves in half. So now we have 4 pieces, and if I cut those 4 pieces in half, I'll have 8 pieces. Okay. To represent 1/8, it would be one of these equally sized pieces, and you can shade any one you want. I will shade this one. Okay. So this is computer generated and nearly perfect, but we did a pretty good job here. Let's look at the next one. Notice the unit is 2 circles. So we don't want to cut 1 circle in 8 pieces, because that would be a unit of 1 circle. So it may seem weird to have 2 circles as a unit, but maybe you can imagine there are 2 cookies in a package and you want 1/8 of the package, and there would be 2 cookies inside. So this could still be 1 package, and this could be a unit of 1, even though there's 2 of something else, namely cookies in it. So to make this 8 pieces, we'll cut each of these into 4 pieces. Okay, so I'll cut the halves and half and half. Okay. Again, pretty good job, not as good as the computer. And now we need any one of these pieces. So this is 1/8 of these 2 circles. And now we have a star. And this can be a little bit tricky. The computer will show you how to, the computer image shows you how to do it down here. You want to use the symmetry of the star. So by that I mean cut it in half, and notice these 2 pieces are equal. Now if I cut those halves in half this way, these 4 pieces, well, they don't look very equal, but they do down here. Okay, so again, it's hard to get it perfect by hand, but it just needs to be close. And then I made 2 more cuts, kind of like an X in the middle, and we have 8 equal pieces. And now, to represent 1/8, I will need to shade one of them, and I will shade this one, and any one will do. Let's look at the next one. Now we want still 1/8, but we're going to use discrete objects. Okay, so our unit, remember, our unit equals 1, and these 24 stars represent our unit. Okay, so again, maybe you could think you could have a case of soda and you want 1/8 of the case of soda. Okay, it would have 24 cans in it, but it would still be 1 case of soda if you think of it in terms of cases. So that's the idea here. So 1/8, so let's think of 1/8 as, one of the ways we thought of it was 1 out of 8. Okay, but since there's more than 8 here, it may be more beneficial to think of it as 1 of every 8. meaning if we group these into groups of 8 and take 1, then that would be 1 of every 8. So notice this is 8 stars across, so this is one group, 2 groups, 3 groups of 8, and from each group I want 1 star. And you could pick any one you want. I'll say pick these, and notice there's a total of 3. So 1/8 is 3 stars. Let's look at the next one. Plot the following fractions on the number line. So notice we have positive and negative numbers. Okay. All of the denominators are 6. Okay. Down here I had a computer generate breaking each unit into 6, but we're going to do this by hand as well. Okay. So to break into 6, remember we need 5 cuts. We're breaking from 0 to 1 and every unit of length 1 into 6 pieces. So let's start with 0 to 1, then we'll do the same process everywhere else. So first break it in half. Now to get 6, we need each of these broken into 3 pieces. Okay. And it's not too hard to get them looking pretty equal. Okay. I like to make the half a little bit longer so I can recognize it, or else all of the tick marks seem to meld together. Okay, so let's do that with the rest. Cut it in half. Make 2 more cuts to make the halves sixths. Okay, notice again we make 5 cuts, which breaks it into 6 equal pieces, each of length 1/6. Okay, now let's plot these. So starting with -5, 6, we start at 0, and that means we're going to move 5 of these tick marks, which are each 1/6, so we can count 5 of them to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -5, 6 is located right here on the number line. Now 1/6, starting at 0, count 1 to the right. This is 1/6. Now we have 7 sixths. Start at 0 and count 7 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Notice I counted 1, even though I didn't draw that tick mark. Okay, so 1, notice if you divide 6 by 6, that equals 1. This was our 6th tick mark, and 7/6 would be right here. Okay. Next, -1/6, so that's 1 to the left of 0. 4/6, well that's 4 to the right from 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally -12/6, I'm going to count 12 to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Notice -6/6 is at -1. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So right at -2, we have -12/6. And that makes sense. They're actually equivalent. Think about our division of integers. If you divide 12 by 6, it's 2. A negative divided by a positive is negative, and we get -2. Let's look at the next one. Represent the fraction using the area model. A single rectangle is the unit. An additional rectangle is given in each problem for the fractions that may require it. So we've already done this with a unit fraction. Now we're going to do this with 3/5. So 3/5 is not a unit fraction. A unit fraction is when the numerator is 1. So I'm going to fill out this first. 3/5 means 3 copies of the unit fraction 1/5. Okay, so this is another way to think of it. Just like we just counted those tick marks, okay, we would count 3 that are broken into 5 equal pieces, meaning 1/5. So it's a little bit harder to break things into fifths since 5 isn't an even number. You can't start by cutting in half. Here's a computer generated image. I'm going to do my best. I have this as a guideline, so I'll probably do pretty well. You might find that you start by doing something like this, and then you say, whoa, those pieces aren't equal and I don't have enough of them. Okay, so sometimes it takes you a couple of shots to get, again, not that it needs to be perfect, even though I did that pretty well if I do say so myself, but I had this to look at. But one piece shouldn't be super longer than another. So remember, part of this is that the number of pieces, the denominator, are equally sized. And now we need 3 of them shaded. And you can pick any 3 you want. I'll pick these 3. So now 3/5 of this figure is shaded. Okay, and we didn't need another rectangle because we could pick 3 of these 5. Let's look at the next one. Now here we have the same unit, the same denominator, but we're asked to shade 6/5 or represent 6/5. Okay, so I'm going to cut this into fifths. Okay, and 6/5 means 6 copies of the unit fraction 1/5. Now any one of these small squares is 1/5. Now if I started shading now, notice there's 5 1/5s in 1, since this is a unit. So we're going to need to cut this rectangle into 5 equal pieces as well. Okay, so shading these 5 isn't enough, we need to shade 6. So you can shade any 6. I'm going to be boring and shade all 5 of these. Okay, notice this piece is a little bigger, but it'll do, okay, because it's hard to do these perfectly. And then we need one more piece. I'll shade this one. I overlapped a little bit there. Oh, let's fix that. So now we have 6/5 shaded. Okay, and it was more than one whole rectangle.